Tech companies should stop hiring after they hit a certain number of employees. It's a bit of a spicy take, but I work at a tech company and I feel that hiring an increasing number of engineers or just people to get more work done isn't the most productive, effective, or even just cost efficient for the company. Because I think the assumption that most people roll with is that, okay, the more people you have, the more output you can get. And whilst that sort of makes sense in theory, right? If everyone maintains the same level of output, that doesn't usually work in practice, right? And the best example, counterexample to this is how small startups can beat large incumbents, in the past, like Microsoft and IBM. So how exactly does a small startup consisting of, let's say, 10, 20, 50 engineers beat a huge company with thousands of employees, right? It just doesn't make sense. But if you think about it, it actually does make quite a bit of sense. And as a software engineer in a growing company now with, I think, 3,000 people and still growing, and by the way, that's still very small compared to your larger FANG companies. Even as a software engineer right now, I can feel the diminishing effects of hiring more engineers, right? Because what you don't think about when you're growing your team is the level of overhead and maintenance that is required. And that's just step one. Every time you hire people and new people, you need to start onboarding them. You need to train them to get used to a ever-growing code base as well. And it's easy to onboard someone into a five-person team when everyone sort of knows what's going on. But when you're onboarding one person, or let's say you're onboarding 100 people into a company of 10,000 people, then suddenly those processes become a lot more complex and finicky, right? And suddenly what should take really a week, 2 weeks becomes a 3 month long, learning process. And that's just the first thing. I think the bigger thing is that as companies grow, and as you hire more engineers to do more work, or what you seem like should be doing more work, actually has the opposite effect, at least from what I've seen, right? Because as we know, just in daily life, the more people are assigned to do a particular task, the less responsibility each individual person takes on, right? Suppose you have to, I don't know, move a table from point A to point B. Well, with two people, it's pretty straightforward, right? Both people coordinate to lift the table and move it from point A to point B. But if you have 10 people, then suddenly, it's like, well, do we really need 10 people to do this task? Is it efficient to do it with 10 people? And then you're suddenly deciding between who should be the people that do the task and, well, what are the others doing? And who's deciding what? And suddenly when you have a surplus amount of people to do a task, well, people take a step back. Why should I do it if there are others? I hope that you have this mentality that, I hope that this person will do it instead. I'll just sit back until they do it, right? And the same thing happens for at companies, right? You have a project you need to work on, whether big or small, and because you have so many engineers, there's less incentive to take the initiative to take it on, right? Because most people, given the option to do work and do less work or do no work, will take that, second option, given that they both receive the same pay, right? And so even though as companies grow and the amount of projects actually increase, I think the individual output for most engineers actually decreases, right? Because it's spread amongst more people, the responsibility, but that real responsibility really isn't. It just sort of disappears. And so decisions take longer to make because there's more people deciding, and it all just becomes I think, hot mess. And so I think, given a growing amount of work, I think it should just be assigned to the same number or even less engineers, right? Because it can be done faster because responsibility is taken up sooner and there's less back and forth between different people. Now you have in a growing company, you need to have alignment requests and communication between 10 different teams. And that all takes time and takes managers as opposed to just, a team of 5 engineers getting together and solving the problem. And so I think what companies should do is after they reach a critical mass of whether it's like 800 engineers or whatever the magic number is, that they should really consider to either really slow down hiring or just stop hiring altogether, right? Because they know you have to consider that every extra engineer is actually taking away from the current engineer's effectiveness and not adding to it. You might think it is, but those gun engineers have to train people, and again, it means that their 10x productivity is now significantly decreased. So again, it's very counterintuitive to not. And in the startup world, there's this really heavy focus on growth and scalability. And if there's a potential and opportunity to grow, they should just take it. But the reality is that it's not always how it works. And especially with the mass layoffs that have happened in tech, you can see that hiring so many people isn't the best. And what you find is that the more you hire, the more people just sit around and do nothing. And that creates again all sorts of culture problems as well. But again, that's a whole another topic. So my belief, and again, it might be contrarian, is that companies should stop hiring after a certain point, right? They should really consider how they can do more with the same amount of people, right? Whether that means disbanding smaller projects or doing less. I think hiring more to think just to get more output isn't the correct or right way to think, right? You're getting diminishing returns and it's not productive for the engineers, the culture, and it's far better to continue with less